Timothy and Anya had been looking for an affordable apartment for months. When they finally stumbled upon the advertisement for an apartment in an old building on the outskirts of town, it seemed like a dream come true. The rent was surprisingly low, and the landlord, an elderly woman named Mrs. O'Reilly, seemed eager to have them move in. The day they arrived, a sense of unease crept over Anya as they stood in front of the imposing structure. Its faded facade and the eerie silence that enveloped it were unsettling. Timothy, ever the optimist, brushed it off as nerves. "It's perfect," he reassured her as they stepped into the dimly lit lobby. The air smelled of must and something else Anya couldn't quite place, a faint metallic scent that set her teeth on edge. Their new home was on the second floor, room 161. As they ascended the creaking staircase, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. Anya's eyes darted around, catching shadows moving in her periphery, but when she turned, there was nothing. The apartment itself was charming, with antique furniture and large windows that let in plenty of light. Anya started to relax, convincing herself that the eerie feeling was just the stress of moving. The first night, they settled in with a bottle of wine. As they laughed and talked, a loud thud echoed from the hallway outside. They exchanged nervous glances. "Probably just the building settling," Timothy said, though his voice lacked conviction. They went to bed, but sleep didn't come easily to Anya. She lay awake, listening to the creaks and groans of the old building. Around midnight, she heard it again, a soft, persistent tapping. She nudged Timothy, who groggily rolled over. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. "Hear what?" he mumbled, half asleep. "That tapping sound," she insisted. But as they both listened, the noise stopped. Timothy shrugged and went back to sleep, but Anya remained awake, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. The following days were filled with more strange occurrences. Anya would find objects moved from where she had left them. Doors would creak open on their own. She couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Timothy, though initially dismissive, began to notice odd things as well. His skepticism waned when he found deep scratch marks on the inside of their bedroom door. One evening, after another unexplained incident where all the pictures on the walls had been turned upside down, Timothy suggested they speak to Mrs. O'Reilly. They found her in her small, cluttered office on the ground floor. "Mrs. O'Reilly, we've been experiencing some strange things in our apartment," Timothy started hesitantly. The old woman's face grew pale. "You're in room 161, aren't you?" she asked, a tremor in her voice. "Yes," Anya replied. "Why?" Mrs. O'Reilly sighed, her hands trembling as she poured herself a glass of water. "I should have told you. That room has a history. The previous tenants, they all experienced the same things. And worse." "What happened to them?" Timothy asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "They disappeared," she said bluntly. "Every single one of them. No one knows where they went. The police found no evidence, no signs of struggle. Just gone." A chill ran down Anya's spine. "Why didn't you warn us?" Mrs. O'Reilly looked down, ashamed. "I hoped maybe it was over. But it seems the room is cursed." Determined to uncover the truth, Timothy and Anya began researching the building's history. They discovered that it had been built in the late 1800s by a man named Theodore Voss, who was rumored to dabble in dark magic. Room 161 had been his study, where he conducted his rituals. It was said that he had opened a portal to another dimension, letting in malevolent entities. The more they learned, the more the activity in their apartment escalated. One night, while sifting through old newspaper clippings, they heard a loud crash from the hallway. They rushed out to find the door to room 170 ajar, though it had been locked and unoccupied for years. Inside, they found a chilling scene. The walls were covered in cryptic symbols, and in the center of the room lay a circle of black candles, still burning. "What the hell is this?" Timothy breathed, stepping cautiously into the room. As they examined the symbols, a cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing the candles. The temperature dropped, and the air grew thick with a malevolent presence. Shadows danced along the walls, forming grotesque shapes that seemed to reach out toward them. Anya screamed as a dark figure materialized in the corner, its eyes glowing with a sinister red light. Timothy grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the door, but it slammed shut with a force that shook the walls. "We need to get out of here," Anya cried, panic rising in her chest. They banged on the door, shouting for help, but their voices seemed to be swallowed by the darkness. The figure advanced slowly, its movements unnaturally fluid. As it drew closer, they felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as if the very air was being sucked out of the room. In a desperate bid to escape, Timothy remembered the symbols he had seen in their research. He quickly traced one of the protective runes on the floor with a piece of chalk he found in his pocket. The figure hesitated, its form flickering. "Keep drawing," Anya urged, helping him complete the circle around them. As they finished the last stroke, a blinding light erupted from the rune, forcing the entity to recoil with a guttural scream. The door burst open, and they stumbled out into the hallway, gasping for breath. The oppressive weight lifted, but the fear remained. "We can't stay here," Timothy said, his voice shaking. "We need to leave. Now." They packed their belongings in a frenzy, not bothering to be neat. As they fled the building, they glanced back at the darkened windows of room 161, knowing they would never return. In the weeks that followed, they found a new apartment far from the old building. The nightmares persisted for a while, but gradually, the memories of room 161 began to fade. But every now and then, in the dead of night, Anya would wake with a start, feeling that same sinister presence lurking just beyond the shadows, reminding her that some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed.